Before we begin our video, I would like to take a moment to correct an error from my previous installment. I incorrectly credited Monster House as being a movie from Warner Brothers. However, it was actually a production of Columbia Pictures. Thanks to Jeff Harris, whose opinion I highly value, for pointing out this mistake, and sorry to Columbia Pictures for not giving them credit there. With that out of the way, on to our current presentation. It's the 80th Annual Academy Awards, and the previous year was one for the ages. After being unfairly snubbed by the Academy for directing classic films like Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, and The Last Temptation of the Christ, Martin Scorsese finally won his long overdue Best Director Oscar for The Departed, which would also go on to win Best Picture. The moment was even better because the award was handed to him by his longtime friends Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and Francis Ford Coppola, all previous Oscar winners themselves.
The three of us are here because we know what a great feeling it is to win an Academy Award for directing.
Yeah, it was the greatest honor that I've ever received.
Hey, guys, I never won an Academy Award.
Well, almost all of them. Don't worry, George. There's still time for you to win the gold if you actually start making movies again. It was also the year where Best Animated Feature had an unpredictable race, one which few people cared about the results, but did end with George Miller, a Hollywood legend, walking home with his first, and to date only, Academy Award for directing Happy Feet. Even though this was a great achievement for him, most movie fans will admit that when they think Oscar-worthy films, Cars, Monster House, and Happy Feet aren't exactly what comes to most people's mind. Ironically, this year was threatening to be a repeat of the previous year. Not only would there be 3 eligible films to be nominated, but the snubs weren't exactly encouraging. For some reason, Alvin and the Chipmunks was considered to have enough animation to qualify for Best Animated Feature, but thankfully, the movie was not nominated. Unlike his previous 2 outings, the Green Ogre that had been so formidable at the Oscars did not receive a nomination for Shrek the Third, or any nomination for that matter. And this film had a record box office opening for the franchise, but fell off fast due to the movie's perceived lack of quality and poor word of mouth. DreamWorks did have a second shot to get in with B-Movie, the first major project from comedian Jerry Seinfeld since his sitcom ended, but while the movie got good reviews, it didn't get great reviews. Disney also failed to get in with Meet the Robinsons, a film that was considered a significant improvement over their previous film, Chicken Little, but received an overall mixed reception still. By the way, for those who want to know more about the history behind this movie, I had a discussion with director Steven Anderson about it as well as his history with Walt Disney Feature Animation, and you can watch the whole podcast at the link above. In terms of more adult animation, Robert Zemeckis released Beowulf to the public, but not only was the critical reception for this a bit lower than that of The Polar Express, there was still that whole motion capture thing that still bothered the animators and the voting branch, so that wasn't getting in. Maybe Tekken I'm sorry, I always butcher that name, could have been a surprise nominee, which was the first Japanese anime to be directed by an American, but the film is very, well, let's put it this way. If this movie was too quirky for some anime fans, it was going to be too quirky for the Academy. Honestly, the only notable snub this year was The Simpsons movie, which was considered a lock for a nomination, considering the massive box office success and reviews that praised the film for being as funny as some of the earlier seasons. Many were surprised the Springfield family didn't get in, but if I were a betting man, I would guess that the reason for the snub was because The Simpsons was considered more of a TV success, and not something that needed to be rewarded in the feature film business. Still, the snub was glaringly obvious, and it should have easily taken the place of one of the nominated films. In fact, let's go out of alphabetical order and discuss that film first. Surf's Up. Directed by former and future Disney Pixar alumni Ash Brannon and Chris Buck, Surf's Up was Sony Animation's big release of the year, and despite having many people roll their eyes and go, ugh, another Penguin movie, Surf's Up ended being a fun time at the movies. telling a fun story of a penguin who wants to be a professional surfer and told in a mockumentary style of filmmaking. The movie even has grain on the image to replicate that of a documentary. Fun side story, this confused my dad, as this and Spider-Man 3 were our first Blu-ray movies we bought. And in comparison to the super crisp image of Spider-Man 3, my dad thought the Surf's Up disc was defective because of this grain, until I explained to him the stylish choice. This is the spot that should have gone to the Simpsons movie. But in all fairness, Surf's Up was a fun little picture, and remains a hidden gem in the world of animation. Now, something to keep in mind is, if Surf's Up is considered the weakest of the nominees, then hopefully the other two would be fantastic in comparison. You would be right in that regard. The next nominee was Persepolis, directed by Marjane, Satrapi, and Vincent Perinaud, based on Satrapi's own autobiographical graphic novel. The movie tells the story of a young Iranian woman who becomes a witness to the Iranian Revolution, and how this event changed her family's life forever. Animated mostly in beautiful black and white traditional animation, the film received rave reviews as being one of the best adult animated movies in years. So acclaimed was it that the movie was even France's selection to be the potential nominee for Best Foreign Language Film that year. Ultimately, the movie wouldn't be nominated there, but a nomination in Best Animated Feature ensured that at least Satrapi and Perinaud were the nominees instead of France as a nation. While most years Persepolis would likely have been the frontrunner to win, it had some serious competition from Pixar's Ratatouille. Directed by Brad Bird, a previous Oscar winner for The Incredibles, the movie told an unusual story of a rat in Paris who wanted to be a great chef. Since the movie has become quite popular, it may be hard to appreciate just how radical a concept this was, and many wondered if Pixar could sell the concept to a mass audience. Yet thanks to Bird's masterful direction, the movie was another box office success and showed that Pixar's winning streak was not going to be broken just because last year's nominee wasn't the greatest movie in the world. The movie was also a true success story for the company, which brought Bird in to seriously retool the project after a version of the movie with previous director Jan Pinkava, a previous Oscar winner himself for the short Jerry's Game, was forced off the project when his version of the movie failed to come together. This was a film that was in a dire state at one point, and the fact that Pixar was able to save it and turn it into what would eventually become one of the studio's most beloved films was something worthy of celebrating. While Persepolis had a lot going for it, Hollywood loves a good comeback story more than anything else. And like last year, a more compelling Oscar race had begun for Best Animated Feature. The award started, and Jon Stewart was the host this year, bringing his unique brand of political jokes with him, none of which would stir the pot too much. After the opening monologue, the first award of the night was for Best Costume Design, which was presented by Jennifer Garner. Elizabeth, the Golden Age, won that award, and after a montage of previous Oscar winners played, Steve Carell and Anne Hathaway came on stage to present the award for Best Animated Feature. And by the way, listen to the great way Carell introduces the category.
The topics they tackle are as diverse as they are important. Political repression in Iran, the grueling and vicious competition in the world of sports, a scathing indictment of health code violations in the restaurant industry.
Sure, the joke may be that the audience is led on to believe that this is the best documentary category, but the fact that he was technically correct in what the movies were about was also a sly nod that the nominees could be taken more seriously than they were last time, whether he realized it or not. That said, Anne Hathaway had to undermine the award with this follow-up.
We're doing animated features. A cute little rat, chubby-wubby, surfing penguins.
What about the girl in Iran?
Animated, Steve. You know, serious subject, but animated characters, not not real.
This is not documentary?
No.
Shoot.
Did you read the script?
No. How many people are watching this?
Just, I don't know, 800 billion.
Oh, I'm gonna be sick. I think I'm gonna be sick.
Look, at least the joke was funny and social media was still new, so this is likely why this didn't get the internet fired up in the same way that other introduction that will get to when the time comes right did. But I suspect that if this aired the way it did today, people who work in animation likely would have taken some issues with this. After showing off the nominees, as well as a truly terrible clip choice for Persepolis.
Persepolis, Marjane Satrapi, and Vincent Perronel.
D'abord, je grandis de 18 cm. Puis ma tête changea. Mon visage s'allongea, puis mon œil droit grossit, talonné par mon menton. Ma main droite devint énorme, puis mon pied gauche. Mon nez tripla de volume. Ma poitrine se développa.
Seriously, out of all the great clips they could have used, they picked that one. The envelope was opened and the winner was announced.
And the Oscar goes to Ratatouille. Brad Bird.
By the way, could Carell have been any less enthusiastic about announcing the winner here? I take back all the nice things I just said about him. Anyway, Pixar was triumphant again, and Brad Bird was officially a 2-time Academy Award winner. But with such stiff competition, why was Ratatouille successful in winning the gold? Unlike last year, there were some very good reasons this might not have been the close race pundits were hoping for, and these are the 5 likely reasons why. Number 1, Ratatouille survived development hell. While the process of making animation is still not respected in the industry the way it should be, stories did make the rounds that Pixar was having trouble with their latest animated film. You don't replace a director, almost completely rewrite the script, and essentially make a new movie from the ground up without someone in the industry taking notice. While Cars may not have been a masterpiece, it was still ultimately a good movie, and that film didn't go through the turmoil Ratatouille did. There was genuine fear that by having to restart the production, Ratatouille was in serious danger of being terrible. The fact that it wound up being one of the best films of the year by many people's estimates was a true testament to Pixar's filmmaking ability. Not to mention, number 2, Brad Bird saved the day. Yes, Brad Bird directing this also made a world of difference. Not only was he a previous winner, not only was he the most well-known name of the nominees, but as the guy who was brought in to save Ratatouille from its original state, Bird was someone the industry could point to and say he was a real director. Yes, I know you are a real director if you direct animated movies. I'm obviously not saying you aren't. But new directors are brought in on projects all the time for live action, and sometimes they still can't save movies that aren't working to begin with. The fact that Ratatouille not only survived a new director, but thrived as a result showed that Bird was not a director to take lightly, and there were likely many Academy members who respected the hell out of his achievement. Number 3, Persepolis wasn't as widely seen. This probably isn't a surprise, but an animated black and white film that was in French about the Iranian Revolution was likely never going to be a huge hit at the box office. That it was noticed enough to get an Oscar nomination at all was a small miracle, but would have been very easily for this to be overlooked, as many other animated international films had been. Kudos to Sony for producing a new English dub starring acclaimed actors like Sean Penn and Gina Rowlands after the film received an Oscar nomination, but by then, it was likely too little, too late. While it's difficult to say if having the dub out in the world before the nominations would have helped, the box office was certainly light compared to Ratatouille, or heck, even Surf's Up, and it's hard to get votes in that scenario. Number 4, Best Picture talks for Ratatouille. While we would normally say critical reception for a movie was great, the truth is Ratatouille's reception wasn't great, it was downright ecstatic. From critics to audiences to even the Academy itself, Ratatouille was on many top 10 best films of the year list, and there was serious talk that the movie might be a contender for Best Picture. Now, keep in mind that at the time, the Academy didn't nominate 10 movies for Best Picture. They nominated 5. As a result, animation was rarely in the discussion for competing in the top category. But Ratatouille sparked serious discussions that it could be competitive in the top category, and maybe even win if it was nominated. Ultimately, that didn't happen, but those talks might not have been crazy because the number one reason Ratatouille won the Oscar nomination that year was because the film received a whopping 5 Oscar nominations, which, for those keeping score, is just 1 nomination shy of previous record holder Beauty and the Beast, which was nominated for Best Picture. The nominations were Best Animated Feature Film, obviously, Best Original Screenplay for Brad Bird, Jan Pinkava, and Jim Capobianco, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Best Original Score for Michael Giacchino, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing. It didn't win any of the other awards, but not only does 5 nominations suggest industry-wide support, it had that coveted screenplay nomination. And if you've been watching this series for a while, you'll understand why a screenplay nomination is always a trump card you want to have in your pocket come voting time. In the end, I may have built up the whole race status a bit more than I should have. The reality is that Ratatouille was a juggernaut going into the night, and Persepolis may have been critically acclaimed, but its chances of winning weren't as big as you would initially think it was. Ratatouille had too much going for it for the Academy to award the French film, and unlike the situation where Spirited Away was clearly the best film of the 5 nominees, it was a tad harder to make that claim with Persepolis when Ratatouille was so good despite going through development hell. As such, Brad Bird taking home his second Oscar wasn't in question that much, and Pixar was once again on top of the Oscars world, and they didn't want to give up that spot, as the following year they would be back in the race with a little trash robot named WALL-E. However, they would receive some fighting competition from their biggest rival, DreamWorks, who would unleash a Kung Fu Panda in the race. See everyone next month. Hey, you made it to the end. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Just a few more things. First of all, the names that you see on the screen, these are our Patreon and YouTube member supporters, and I thank each and every one of them. Their support helps me make exclusive videos for Patreon and YouTube members, as well as keep the channel running, and of course is just of huge kindness to me. Also, don't forget to check out the iCritic-led podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Deezer, whatever podcasting service you listen to, it is there. We definitely want to see you there. And hey, there's also other videos that you can check out. So, check out these other channels, these other videos, especially that one. I think that's a really good one.